Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Disabled Photography Society webinar. It is my pleasure to present great landscape and seascape photographer Susan Brown, and she will tell maybe a few words about herself to us. And the talk is seeing and looking. Oh, sorry, I forgot that.
Looking and seeing, which is
looking and seeing. What's the difference? Sorry. So yes, please, Susan, if you'd like to say a few words, and yeah, welcome.
Do you want me to talk now and then share the screen?
It's up to you.
Can people, they can hear me now? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't say very much about me because you want to see pictures. I've been doing photography for a very long time. I can remember when I started because it was 1979 and I was about to have a child, and I panicked thinking I was going to be an airhead left at home looking after a child and not doing anything else. So I took up photography and did a year at night school doing darkroom work. And I just love doing it. So it's gone from there really, and taken up many challenges en route, and still taking them on and still enjoying it. So shall I share my screen now?
Yes, please.
Take me just a couple of minutes to get it into the right place. Right, can you see that all right?
Yes.
Good. Well, I thought I would start just by giving you some idea of where I live. I moved to Devon in 2005, so quite a long time ago, but I spent a lot of time doing photography beforehand. And when I came here, I'd never lived near the sea really. I was been living in cities. So I had to change from city to sea and from darkroom to digital. So it was a huge change for me. And I'll just show you that picture without the writing on it. It becomes a bit clearer. And this is just down the road from me. I feel very lucky to live where I do. And as you can see, at that stage, it looks quite gentle. It's quite a sailing community. We're about 8 miles from Plymouth. So if the boats go behind me, that way it takes them out to sea. So I'll just run through a few just to give you an idea of the variety of where I am. Now this is the same place, but the tide is right out. So you've got the mud flats. And this is where you start looking to see what else you can see. I mean, people say, oh, it's muddy. But you can hear birds singing, you can hear seabirds, so you can start to look and you see the footprints going across the sand towards the water. So they've obviously just paddled across. So many people would just walk past and just look. But if you stay there for a while, you start to see, and you see more. And you've got the lovely shadows, the long shadows, which gives you a time of the day it is. It's obviously evening, and you can see how deep the sort of trenches are in the mud. So the tide is obviously quite a strong tide to gouge out these big channels. And that's just a picture to show you, it's just a fun one really, what it can be like at regatta time. I took this picture from the top of the church tower. The church tower has a very winding spiral staircase, which is very narrow and dark, and getting up there with a camera and tripod was a job. I got to the top and I was there for a while taking these pictures, and I'd arranged to meet some people at 7 o'clock. So I was about to leave to find out that somebody didn't know I was up there, and they'd locked the door to the church tower. So I was locked in the church. So I kept shouting and waving at people, and of course they all waved back. Eventually somebody said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "No, I'm stranded." So they went to the local pub and said, "Has anybody in here got a key for the church tower?" And somebody came and let me out. But you
Wow.
can see there's a great sense of excitement, and you can imagine the noise with people blowing horns and so on. And then we get something that you probably heard in other places, a sea fret that comes through. This can be on a lovely day, nice and sunny, and all of a sudden this mist comes in from the sea and it drifts right across you and then disappears. You can just see the top of the church there, which is where I took the photographs from and got locked in. And when that happens, the temperature drops by about 10 degrees. It can happen in the middle of the summer. And then all of a sudden, you're back in the sunshine again. So that was taken just as a sea fret was passing through. And sometimes we get storms, and they can be pretty bad. And I was actually standing in front of somebody's house when I took this picture. And I said to them, are the waves likely to come up here? Because I knew it was a stormy day and that we had a prevailing wind coming from the southwest. And they said, oh, I wouldn't think so. So I put my tripod there and got ready. And within a few minutes, I was up to the top of my thighs in water. Fortunately, the lady standing behind her garden wall grabbed hold of me, because you can imagine the power of the water dragging my feet from under me as it went back out again. And that day, it actually took down the wall. You can see the wall collapsing here, the sea wall. You can see the bus coming down, trying to get to the bus stop, and people looking from the other side. And after that storm, we found boats 30 meters up the road, on the road, quite extraordinary. So it's not always as peaceful as it looks. And then this was taken in winter. It's just an iPhone shot from my bedroom window in thick ice. And the tide is going out, so there's not much water, but it just gives you just a different feel of how many different places you feel you are within the space of a year with the different climate. So I'm now going to take you from here to the other side of the world. We're off to Australia. I had a daughter until recently who lived in Australia. She was living in Sydney with her family. And I got friendly with a chap called Len Metcalf, who's a very well-known landscape photographer. And when I go out, he picks me up and takes me somewhere. And this particular day, we went up into the Blue Mountains to the Katoomba Falls. And he picked me up before it was sunrise, and it was dark, it was raining, and it was thick fog. And I thought, oh, perfect for the Blue Mountains. This is going to be great. And the first thing that struck me about being out in Australia in a place like this was the enormity of the vegetation. Because of the heat and the dampness there, everything's 10 times the size that I was used to seeing it. And you can see this big palm is gently blowing in the wind. So I was obviously using a tripod. And everywhere you went, there were these waterfalls coming down, and you could hear the noise of them, and the fog and the mist had that dull sound that you get when it's so thick with fog. It's quite eerie. And then this was a part I really didn't like on the walk. You can see the steepness of that particular piece of pathway. And I'm glad that my guide was a gentleman, and he held one end of my tripod and I had the other while he helped me down there. I had visions of getting to the bottom a bit quicker than I'd anticipated. But you can see the falls again coming here. And obviously this is another fall coming down much quicker, which is why there's no detail in it. So you start to notice that this is obviously a ledge which has slowed the water down, so you get a bit of detail. And this is obviously falling from a height. So you start to see more, and you can see the eucalyptus trees, which tells you where we are. And again, they're blowing in the wind. And we still have it again. You've got the long waterfall there. And then because it's hitting these ledges, you're getting more detail and into the stream. Nice to be on the flat here, walking on a nice pathway. and nobody having to hold me up. But while I was standing there, I could hear some rustling behind me. Of course, I'm in Australia, immediate panic. Snakes. I've no idea what it was, but somebody had told me if you're around when there are snakes, and there's bound to be some there, that they don't see and they don't hear very well, but they feel. So you need to cause vibrations. So I was walking around like a lunatic, stamping my feet so that they knew I was there and wouldn't come near me. And then this one getting down a bit lower, so you can see there's more and more falls, and again the eucalyptus trees and the evergreens as well. And this one was called Witch's Leap. I'm not quite sure why, but it must have a reason, but I haven't been able to find out what. And you can see all the big ferns again here, and the water falling from a height before it finds a ledge that slows it down, a rock here that divides it. So you've got the waterfall coming down both sides, and just a little kink there that gives it a nice little bit of shape as it hits a rock on the way down. And towards the bottom of the waterfalls, where you've got the reflection of them in the pond at the bottom, and by now it's the noise is quite deafening there. You wouldn't hear anything. There's so much water. And I just took that one more of an abstract just to see the lovely flow of the water. I call it the curtain, because once you start looking and feeling it, you can see this complete curtain blocking your view from what's beyond it before it hits that ledge there and slows it down. So it was a fairly abstract picture, but you can just see through them. It's almost like net curtains. And this is right at the bottom. And I was supposed to be looking at the Three Sisters, the mountain range here, but the fog was so thick that you can just see the edge of one of them. So I just took that really, because I thought it looked a bit like a Japanese scroll, just the minimalism of it and the negative space, and just giving you that atmosphere of not really being able to see very much at all. Len and I sat and had a chat here while we were waiting for the mist to lift a bit, which it didn't. And he asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, to be honest, I've got to a bit of a dead end at the minute. I've just finished a project, and I'm sure a lot of you will identify with this, that sometimes when you've just finished doing something, it's very difficult to know how to move on. Where do I go now? What am I going to do? And he said to me, I would say go home, look in your cupboard, your old camera bag, and find something that you bought that you rarely use. You bought it for a reason. Take it out, use it on its own for 6 months, and don't take it off your camera. So I got home and I found a 50mm lens, which went to f1.2, which is why I bought it. I found it a bit difficult to use, so I'd stuffed it back in the cupboard. Anyway, I got home and I put the 50mm lens on, and that was one of the first pictures I took with it, and I'm not pleased with it because it's not sharp anywhere. And I had a few hundred of those before I got the hang of it. But once I got the hang of it, I really enjoyed working with this 50mm at 1.2. And it's where I ended up, not intentionally, but I decided in the end to do a second fellowship panel. I'd had one done in 1991, which was a long time ago. And because I sat on the distinctions panels, I felt to have credibility, I needed to be up to date. So I carried on. I'm not going to show you the whole panel. I'll show you at the end, but I'll show you some of the pictures from that panel. This was the idea. It was feeling fenced in. I could read you the statement of intent if you want me to, but basically it was, you feel a bit fenced in, you don't know where to go. And if you move on and do something different, is it the right thing to do or not? And by doing it at 1.2, you don't really know because you can't see what's the other side of the fence. So by crossing the fence and trying something new, you don't know if it's going to work or not. That one's a little bit more obvious, obviously a sort of farm fence with wildflowers growing behind it. And this one I quite enjoyed because it's quite ambiguous, because the fence here is quite a sophisticated one. And then you've got this tacky bit of wire around it. And again, you've got just the little light here, catching a light behind it, and a bit of a cobweb here. So it's 2 stories really, and you don't know what's the other side. So why is the fence there? And do we want to go the other side or not? And this one I'm not going to cross at all because it's obviously electric. And you can see that somebody or something has been through because it's burnt the wire here. And again, you can see the cobwebs and things at the bottom, and just this very shallow depth of field on the plane of the rope. And this was a builder's yard, and this was the netting around the edge. It nearly made me do it in colour because this was the most beautiful turquoise blue with back stitching, black stitching, and it was a very sophisticated fence for a building area. But again, you can't see what's the other side. And this one was one of the middle pictures of the panel, as you'll see later. So it's got this line down the centre, and it's actually a beach hut. So these are the knobs on the beach hut on the coast, with the different wires, obviously not too serious about keeping people out because it wouldn't be too difficult to get through there. In contrast to this one, a much more sophisticated fence, one I quite enjoy. I liked all the little way the blobs of light were catching the out of focus here. And obviously a very modern fence, very sturdy, steel, and you can feel the strength of it, and you can see it, the light catching behind it, giving you the bokeh. And the way some people have to try and see what's behind, they vandalize things and make holes in fences, trying to see what's the other side. So they can't see because it's only f1.2. And this one is about 7 fences, all stacked up against each other. And I don't know how many times I took this before I could get the one in the front to be the one in focus, because it didn't look right if it was one of the others. It had to be the front one. And they're very close together, so the autofocus was going mad. And I have a slight problem with my eyes, with a bit of macular degeneration, so I do rely on my autofocus on the camera. I can't remember exactly what this was here, but it looks to me a bit like a hooded figure. So I thought it looked quite sinister. So I quite enjoyed that picture. And this one was actually taken in Australia. It's the top of Bondi Beach, a very sturdy fence to stop people falling off the edge onto the beach, which is a big drop. And there's another one of that on a different part of the beach a bit later. And just down the road from where I live, just walking along the river, just this tacky little bit of barbed wire fence. And that's the other one from the beach further up, where you've got the 2 rows this time of fencing coming down. And the last one of the panel was this one, which was a bit out of kilter really, because the others were all focusing on the foreground. But in this one, I had the 3 types of fencing, because you've got this plastic one here, the barbed wire, and then this bit of metal coming down here. So I had to focus on the end, and I thought it was worth doing that as the last image because it gave it a sort of full stop to the panel. And that is the panel laid out. And what you can't see really clearly is what I'd done was I'd started by focusing on the edge of the picture here, gradually getting further and further into the center. So here it's the central part that's focused, and getting further out and focused here. And then you've got the line coming down the middle, which meets up with that line there. And then it comes to a full stop here, you're blocked. And that one leads along to that one, leads along to that one. So the layout of the panel itself had a lot of work to it. And I thought, just as a bit of fun, you might like to see just the layout of 1991's panel, remembering this was a long time ago. It was a darkroom panel. It was photographed so long ago that it had all gone mouldy in my cellar, and I had to clean it all up, and I just photographed it, rephotographed it as it was. So as I told you, I was in cities then, and we've got Brighton and London and Milton Keynes, and the whole point of it was sort of graphic images and showing light and shade. In those days, it was only 18. You didn't have to have a theme, and you didn't have to have a statement of intent. So a very different panel, and a long time ago, but quite fun to look back on. So people often say to me, so did you cross the fence? Did you start doing something different? And the answer is, no, I didn't. I think I preferred to stay where I am, so I'm back on the beach. So this was a picture, very simple, taken up in North Devon. I was away with a friend for a few days, and it was not photographically good weather. It was clear blue skies and sunshine. So what do? You start having to look hard. And when you start looking really hard, you start to see things. And these were small pebbles, and they had little landscapes on them with the sand. As the tide was coming round them, it gradually washed them off. And as they dried on the top, you had what looked like little maps. So the more you look, the more you see in something just at your feet. And then we went on to two pebbles. And you can see the line of where the sand has got left on now, and all the rest is underwater. That one is submerged. And the landscape that was on here is gradually being washed off. And if you forget about those there, we can say we've now got three. And you've still got a nice little landscape here. They were like little trees going across a hill, and the sort of land going round. And then this lovely double line round here. And we're talking about pebbles that are no bigger than the size of my hand. So they're small. So it's just looking and then seeing things in there that you could have just stood on them and thought what a nuisance they were because you trip over them. And this was a very different day at the same beach, storm force 10, and there's some idiot going out with a surfboard. It's not a long lens, so you don't see him close up, but you can see all the spray coming from the waves here and that lovely stormy sky and sort of weather I love to be in to photograph. And this was the following morning. The wind had whipped up all the sand. It had made it into lovely patterns, and then it had thrown it down with rain, which had almost solidified the patterns in the sand. And you had this lovely design. And just one man, and I don't know if you can see the little white dog, he's walking in there. You can still see the sea's rough because you've still got the spray coming off, the tide's well out, but just this lovely sense of peace on a winter's day, walking through after the storm has passed. And this one I put in, it's sort of an odd one on its own really, but we're talking about looking and seeing. You walk along a beach and you look and you see the waves coming in and the waves going out, and you see the stones on the beach. But sometimes you need to just watch for a while and see what's really happening. And I noticed that the waves were coming in, they were coming down here, round this stone, out here, looked as if they were coming back and as if they were going into a channel here. So I timed how long it took for that wave to go round, and it was 4 seconds. So I put my camera onto 4 seconds, and took that picture. So you've got the complete circumnavigation of the rock round here and back in, which is what I could see once I got the idea and had got past just looking at the movement of the sea. A similar thing here, this was on the coast of Ireland. And again, you've got these lovely patterns coming round this rock, going round and round and round. Some of them get past, and then there was this lovely foamy edge. Now, I did that one in black and white. And then I thought, actually, the blues in the sky were rather lovely. So I just brought them back gently and left the sand black and the thing black in the front here to give the contrast and almost the feeling of that volcanic sand. So a bit of processing there with it being slightly colour and black and white. Now this is a photograph I remember very well. I was on the coast of Ireland staying, you've probably heard of John Houghton, lovely landscape photographer, and he's got 2 cottages now near this beach. One is his own and another one that he rents out. And he'd let me stay in his, which was kind of him. And he had a workshop starting at the weekend and people arrived early and he asked me if I would take them out. I said, well, John, where will I go? So he told me the name of the beach, how to get there, and gave me the health and safety rules. The tide would be out when I got there and not to go round this rock here or I'd be cut off and so on, and the weather could be quite stormy. So off I went with these 3 gentlemen who were there to come on a workshop. They all had huge, great cameras and long lenses and were quite experienced photographers. So I said to them, do you mind if I take pictures as well? I know you're on a workshop, but I'm on holiday too, but if you need anything, just ask. Oh, no, carry on, they said. So I'm taking my pictures and I'm loving it. It's just beautiful. The waves were crashing in, the spray was in my hair, I could taste it on my lips and it was stinging my eyes on occasions. And I suddenly realized I was on my own. And I thought, well, where have they gone? And I looked around, no sign of them. And then I heard a voice shout at me. They obviously could see I was looking for them. They were sitting in a car on the slipway down to the beach with their long lenses on, taking pictures so that they didn't get the spray on their lenses. And they were about to spend a week with John Houghton, who would have spent his time down here. So I had to laugh. I thought they're in for a rough week. But what they were missing, because all of my senses were going here, the touch, the feel, the smell, the sound, everything. And they're sitting in a car. Anyway, each to their own. And this is on the north coast of Devon. I'd been out with my husband for a day. He's not a photographer, so he suffers me in silence. But all day we'd had thunderstorms, we'd had lightning, it had bucketed with rain, we'd gone back to the hotel to get warm. And often after a day like that, you suddenly get some sort of magic light in the evening. So I said, I'm going out. So I went down these 100 steps to this beach and it was pouring with rain. There was a cave at the back where I managed to keep dry for a while, but I could see what was happening. There was light beginning to come and so on, and it was going to come good. It was obvious where the prevailing wind was because these rocks here are all eroded. They're all smooth. These are all jagged. The sea is coming the other side of them. So you can imagine how rough they looked. I learned a big lesson with this picture because somebody asked to buy it from me 1 meter wide. Well, I can't print that big. So I had to take it to somebody in London and they asked me to go and join them, which I did. And they said to bring my raw image with me. So I did, fortunately, because when they blew it up 1 meter wide, I could see a halo around the edge. I said, oh no, where's that come from? And they said, "You've sharpened it." I thought, yes, I have. And they said, "Why do people do that?" Because if you've got a good camera, which you have, people over sharpen. Now, I didn't notice that even at A2, but at Amita I did. So we started the raw conversion right from the beginning with no sharpening at all. And all we've done is just manage the exposure. And it's a straight print with just the exposure done on the raw conversion. So since then, I do not sharpen my images. Now, anybody who knows me knows my love of swimming pools by the sea. I told you I came from city to coast. In the cities, I was doing architecture, and you saw from my first fellowship panel, everything was angular. It was all about geometry, triangles, and so on. And I got here and there was all this water, and I couldn't find anything to actually fix my eye on until I went to Bude. And this is Bude swimming pool, and you can tell this is an old picture because every year the fence gets blown down in storms, and now there's not one fence, there's only one fence here, and it's further up. So this is an old picture, and taken at about 1/3 of a second, and the water's moving at quite a rate. It fills the pool and comes over the edge. You can just see the light catching the edge and up the fence. Much later, a few years later, that fence I showed you has gone. It was covering this grid here. Now we've got this single one, and you can see it's bent. So that one's gone now. And again, you can see how the waves are coming in and pouring over the side of this pool. Still there. A bit later in the evening as the sun sets, and you can see the waves coming in. It's like a washing machine in here. The tide's beginning to go out, so you can see the edge of the pool here and imagine where it is going round there. And then you've got all these nasty rocks here, and you've got to be very careful. Now it's just after dark, the tide has gone out, and I've walked round the pool to this side. So looking carefully and seeing that line coming up there in the middle, so that you've got a nice geometric shape of the two, and trying to line these two up so that they didn't, but you couldn't quite, because I couldn't quite get in the right place. But it just shows you the difference with the shutter speed and the time of the day and where you stand. And this one's on the East Coast, when you have to be very quick taking this one, because if the tide's out, it's a mess. It's covered in slimy, seaweedy rocks, and 10 minutes time it would be covered and you can't see the pool at all. Brixton, near us, near me, Brixton Pool. Now the one thing I noticed here was that the horizon is not in line with the edge of the pool. I mean, what sort of architect would not think of that? Us poor photographers trying to get things lined up, and you've obviously got an angle there and there. So to try and take away being able to see that difference, I tried to make something line up. So I made sure that this line here was parallel to those lines there, to make sure that the composition, so as you come in through the picture, that's absolutely parallel, which gives you the illusion that it is not distorted from the actual horizon. Yes, this one's Penzance Jubilee Pool. This is different to most of them. It's a pool you have to pay to get into, so it's not accessible from the beach. They wouldn't let me in with a camera when people are in there. So I was invited to do it in summertime, in the winter time or summertime, when the pool was being cleaned and it was closed to the public. They gave me a day and a time. Well, I got there, clear blue skies and sunshine. The water level was low. it looked messy. So I had to use quite a few neutral density filters to get a very long shutter speed, which got rid of some of the mess that was floating on the top, but I still wasn't happy. So at lunchtime, I disappeared to the market and bought a red towel and a pair of red shoes and decided I'd try and make it into something. Well, that sat on my desktop for 3 or 4 months, thinking it's a put up one. I don't really like set up pictures. I like it to be natural. But in the end, I decided I'd have a go at it, and it's probably been one of my most successful pictures. So you just never know. But again, you've got the composition, because you've got steps going up here, and then you've got steps going up here and round, and you can see them going up here out of the pool. So it's just looking around the picture and taking everything in. This one's Australia. This is Palm Beach. I was at a wedding in Australia, and the wedding was on Palm Beach, the other end of it. And there was a break between the wedding and the reception. So with dress hoiked up, wellies out the boot of the car, I quickly nipped down here because I could see the weather was just perfect, and got this lovely picture of Palm Beach. Again, getting things so that they don't confuse, the top of that lining up with the edge of the shoreline there. Otherwise it starts to get messy, and bringing that corner in there to there, so you've got the nice diagonal. Again, in Australia, there are lots of these pools in Australia because they do lots of triathlons, so there's lots of people training. So the pools are large. This is a very small section, but they're done so that one side is laned and numbered for the people doing triathlons, and the other side is people just having fun. I had delightfully bad weather this particular trip, so people weren't swimming very much, and I had the pools to myself, and you've got, again, a shallowish depth of field and moving away from the background. Also in Australia, a lot of the net's gone in a storm, but the net's around the edge to keep the sharks out. You do get sharks and big jellyfish in the pools. And when you leave one of these pools, there's a great big notice board which tells people what's in the water. So if you see anything in the water, you've got a piece of chalk and you write it on the board so that people know what's in there and go in at your own risk. But there's one person here just looking over the edge, very long shutter speed. It was well into the evening, and he must have just been gazing out of the pool for ages to actually register. And because the pool was high tide from that side, continually overflowing, so you've got the detail in the water, and then just a bit of moonlight catching the edges here of the fence. Now, surprisingly enough, I didn't go down to this pool on this day. We have spring tides here, they have king tides there. And this was a king tide with a storm, and you can see what the weather is like. And to my horror, the next thing I see is a young girl with a surfboard hanging onto the rope. Just remember that last picture you saw, and she's walking along here. Now, like most waves, you get these huge, great waves, and they oscillate. So they come in, they'll come right over here, and then they drag out. And as it dragged out, she ran across these stones straight into this wave here and disappeared back to shore. Well, I'm glad it wasn't my daughter. I was having 50 fits watching her. And it's not just swimming pools. I did a little book called Swimming with the Tide, because this is Tenerife. So you've got this lovely volcanic rock. And this is the same person 1, 2, 3, 4 times in one exposure, taking pictures with her mobile phone, walking around. Lovely evening light and these steps so people can go down and swim in the sea. And at sunset, the lovely volcanic rocks again, more emphasis on the rocks this time, and taking that crack along to take you along here down to this dip. Just being careful of the composition, getting that to make sure you can see the edge, and just the sun disappearing in the distance there. So I'll go and do a little bit of minimalism, and then if you want to break for just a few minutes, just to catch your breath, have a glass of water or whatever, I can stop, whatever you like. So I'll take you through these and then you can decide.
Okay.
I love minimalist photographs. This is Dawlish Warren, not far from me. And the tide was high, and I just took this from the top of the sand dunes. So it was looking down, because a horizon would have ruined this picture. Because if you're down low, you get a horizon, and that tends to fight with the graphics of the picture. So you'd have had a line across there, which would have spoilt it. So unusually for me, it was a long lens standing on top of the sand dunes. And I decided to have a bit of fun with it. So I flipped it and took out the beacon and made that a bit darker, just to get something else out of it. Now, this was a shambles, and you have to show your mistakes as well as your successes. I'd gone out with the idea of going to these lifeboat places in Wales, in Swansea, where there's an old lifeboat house and the new one. This is the modern one. And there's this bridge which joins them up. What I wanted was a long, narrow picture with all these joined up. But I stupidly took each picture and changed the focal length of the camera. So I ended up with those two. No way could I get them to meet at the same size. And that one was well out of the picture. So I thought it was just a bit of fun to show you. And one day I'll go back and do it properly. And now we're in France, on the southwest coast of France. Not a long shutter speed. You can see that from the boat coming in here. You can see the wake behind it, it's moving. A fence here to stop the eye going out that side. And this was in thick fog down at the oyster beds. More or less got the horizon, albeit very faded, in a straight line, and complete reflections of these, so it's difficult to see where they are unless they're bent like that, where you can see where the bottom is. The middle one is virtually of nothing, but it just fits well in the middle of the picture. And up on the, after we'd done the lifeboats in Wales, I went up onto the moors, and really I couldn't find anything very much up there to photograph, and I got chased by a rather angry horse at one stage. So I just did these photographs of the grasses and got back in my car and got out. And these are the oyster beds in Australia. I quite enjoyed this one. I quite enjoy negative space sometimes. I can imagine some judges saying, oh, there's nothing in the middle. But these were mangrove swamps at the front here. And then these are the oyster beds, none of which are quite sharp because they're all floating. So they've got these stakes in the water and these floating oyster beds. And then one I nearly ditched because I thought there's nothing sharp in this. And then I thought, actually, I quite like it like that. So this is one mangrove tree, quite small plant. And then you can see the lovely curves of these oyster beds going out in the distance. And that's taking you on to something else completely. So would you like a short break or would you like to continue?
I mean, I'm okay.
Okay, that's fine by me.
If you're okay, then yeah.
I'm fine. I'll just have one quick sip. I'm now bringing you into lockdown. I felt very privileged in lockdown. I felt spoilt. I felt guilty. This is just down the road from me, overlooking the river, the beautiful woods. And every day I walked through these woods, there was silence because there were no boats allowed on the river. There were no cars on the road. The bird song was beautiful. and the wild flowers were lovely. And I felt so much for those people who were living in high-rise flats, people who couldn't get out. And every day I felt lucky and guilty. Difficult emotions to come to terms with. And the same woods, and again, I mean, most people wouldn't have been allowed to take a tripod because you were only allowed out for an hour, but nobody could see me, nobody was here, it didn't seem to matter. And you've got the blurring of the trees there where I had the wind blowing, and this is wild garlic coming down as well. So you've got all the senses there, the sounds of the bird, the wind, the smell of the wild garlic, and the feel of the warmth. It was just a lovely time of year. And this is a seat. This has been done in memory of somebody, and it's actually overlooking the river. I did that also in black and white. And I actually did that in infrared. During lockdown, I had a Fuji X-T2, which I never really came to terms with. I never quite got used to using it, and I wasn't using it. I carried on with my other camera all the time. So I had it converted to infrared, and I think this was one of the first pictures I did with it. And this was another taken near where my daughter lives. I love silver birch trees. We don't have any down here, very few. So if I see silver birch trees, I'm off like a shot. I think they're beautiful trees. And down the road from us, one of the boat houses on the river. I wasn't so happy with this picture because one thing I'm not so keen on, which most people buy infrared for, are these white leaves you get on the trees. To me, it takes it away from reality, which is fine, but it's not what I'm looking for. This was also in infrared during lockdown. This was VE Day. And again, it was looking around to see what I could see and what emotion did I feel from it. Well, I wanted to keep the anonymity of the person here. I wanted to keep that private, but there was a flower, wild flowers growing here. So I thought it was rather poignant on VE Day. If you've got the wildflower against the gravestones, life goes on. So I'm doing it in infrared gave me this lovely contrast and the sort of white of the grass around it. And in the same churchyard, again, making sure the gravestones are in the shade so people can't see who they belong to. But again, you've got the white here, which if I'd done it just a couple of weeks earlier before that came out, I think I would have had more pleasure. And that is just an illustrative picture, really, to show you how dry it was during the first lockdown. We had no rain, we were in drought conditions, and the earth was completely cracked. Now, one of the reasons I had this camera made into infrared was because I had this bee in my bonnet, stupidly, that I wanted to do something different with it. And I thought if I could do a series of sports fields, because then you could get things like football, nets, rugby, goal posts, such like, against a dark sky, the grass would be white like snow, and it would be quite interesting. I've had difficulty because I can't find the variety of sports things, but I've done a few. That was the same place in early winter. So the leaves have gone from the trees and you've got the shadows there. And this was the tennis courts, locally, the public tennis courts. This was on a guided walk with some people, and it was a walk on composition. So this one, you've got it's absolutely symmetrical. You've got two posts there, and then the white one in the middle lined up with the white line. And then you've got the triangle here of the net going up and the net going up there to meet the corner of the court. And I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but that carries on to the metal gate that takes you out of the thing. So it's completely on composition. I didn't find it a particularly inspiring picture, but it was just the layout I was getting at. But go back again an hour later, and the sun has gone down a lot. Now you've got this lovely long shadows of the trees. You can see it's the tennis court with the shadows of the fence going round it and the lines of the court. Totally different picture, same place. And then there was a sports place where we went to get our COVID jabs. I thought, oh, rugby pitch. So, and this is Dartmoor in the background. So I quite enjoyed that, because that could easily be snow on Dartmoor. And again, making sure of looking and seeing more than that. Where does that shadow go to? So let's make it sure it goes to the bottom of the goalpost. So positioning yourself and making sure the composition does something more than just taking the picture. And that one I didn't really like so much, but I put it in because, again, you've got quite a good view of Dartmoor in the background, and all the rugby posts there just put up because they're not using them. Nobody was allowed to play rugby. And again, the two against the black sky. And now you've got the football nets chained together, and you can see the lines in the infrared where the grass is and so on, and where the lines have been painted, and just nobody allowed to be there. Where the net should be. So it's just a close-up of the grass and the lines painted. And now going to something totally different. Yes, photographs don't all have to be perfect and artistic and so on. You can just enjoy it and just have a bit of fun. You don't always want to, or may not be able to, carry a tripod and things around with you. So this was a small compact camera, a walk along a beach in North Devon during lockdown, when they just started opening it up. And you can see people social distancing. So instead of all standing together, I thought it was quite amusing. They look as if they're all marching along together. And 3 people walking towards you, having a chat, but keeping apart. So I did quite a lot on this, and they're just straightforward pictures. There's nothing brilliant about them at all, but they just gave me a sense of memory of a lovely day, people beginning to get out and do something, but being very careful what they're doing. The 3 ladies standing apart with the light coming through and the lovely light in the distance. So I just put them all together in the end and just did a panel of 9 pictures, which is just a day out enjoying yourself and nothing special, no need, a phone could have done it, anything. So we don't always have to be trying too hard. And then in the December, there was another short break of lockdown. And it's my birthday in December, and my husband said, would I like to go somewhere? And I thought, oh, I'd love to. We've hardly been anywhere. So one of my favourite hotels is this hotel on the north coast of Cornwall. And we went and had a night there. And this is a sort of an infinity pool that goes out, and you can see the sea through the window here. And you can see that from the reception area. And it was virtually deserted. The hotel was staggering meals. You could only have 3 tables in the restaurant. They only had every 3rd room filled. And you can see big, big skies, great expanses of beach, and just little families and couples walking along the beach. This was December 2020. And again, looking in the other direction, the reflection of the rocks and the lines where the tide's coming in, and just 2 people in the lovely stormy sky. And somebody taking an early morning stroll And really just to give you an idea of the geology of the place, these incredible rocks and all the different colours that you can get in the slate. And that was my last picture for 2020. And I've got two people walking along the beach. They're walking out of the picture, which was deliberate, because they're walking away from 2020, where we all wanted to leave it behind. It had been an awful year for so many people. So I thought to have people walking out of it was probably the best thing to do. And then out of lockdown altogether now, this year, we went to Carbis Bay. We booked it a long time ago, but then of course COVID stopped it. But we were able to still keep our place, and they just said they would let us have it later on. So we went in March, I think it was, this year, and we can walk to St Ives from there. So we went into all the galleries, and as my husband's not a photographer, so we have to agree to do what he wants in the daytime, and then I get my time during the blue hour in the evening. And lovely stormy skies and this beautiful sunset, and there were these lovely water patterns where you've got a stream running through here and then all these little rivulets. And again, a wider angle here, showing you St Ives in the distance with the lights on. You can see the sea's quite rough, and you can see the power of the sky and these bright yellows that you get when it's wintry. Yeah. And rather similar to the first one, but the colour has changed a bit. And this is in St Ives. This is taken from Tate St Ives. We're looking through the window. This is actually the reflections in all the windows, but you can see the sea was pretty rough outside. And I'm up on the top floor, and there are all these people, workmen down here doing work on the building. I took that for fun, really, because it's a porthole, and I thought it looked a bit like a tumble dryer. So you've got one of the studios over here with this light in it, and just this, that's a picture rail across there. And I just closed in on a small area. Not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't know if any of you know, what's her name? Somebody bourgeois, who did the big sculpture of the big spider that was outside one of the Tates at one stage. And it looks just like it. The shadow from this stool looked like the big spider of the sculpture. And just this empty stool taken in Tate St Ives. Yeah, so again, a lot of negative space. And this is the Tate St Ives from above. As you're walking up the hill to leave, these sort of architecture. So these are the lights here that you can see through the windows, but just reflected. And again, the front of the Tate with the windows. And just walking along, just reflections in a window. Just observations, really, walking around St Ives. It's a wonderful place to wander around in winter. I'd never go there in the summer, it's heaving. And it's lovely to see somebody with a bit of humour, isn't it? This is a plastic tree here, I hasten to add. It isn't real cherry blossom. And it's a dog grooming place. And it says dog friendly inside. So it's just nice that people have a bit of a sense of humour, and you have to take the picture, don't you? And I put these in because sometimes it's lovely to hear what people say. All the techniques in the world doesn't compensate for the inability to notice. Elliot Erwitt, one of my favourite photographers. But that's one of the things I'm saying, the inability to notice. You can see things, but if you don't notice them, you can't compensate by playing around in Photoshop. You need really to see what you're going to be taking. Edward Weston, sense of humour. To consult the rules of composition before making a picture is a bit like consulting the law of gravity before taking a walk. Again, the rules of composition are great, as a guideline. But I think some of the most successful pictures, those that break the rules of composition, especially something like the rule of thirds, if you've got a demanding, stormy sky, then make it 90% and just have a strip of sand across the bottom. Break the rules of composition, they're there to be broken. And the friend of mine, Len Metcalf in Australia, art and photography isn't a competition or a race. There is no first or best. Concentrate on making what work you are pleased with. There's so much truth in that, because I think if you're pleased with a picture, you've succeeded and it's a winner. If other people like it, it's a bonus. But you can't take pictures to order, at least I can't. I have to feel something for the picture, for the emotion to come through. And if I don't feel that, I can't expect the viewer to feel it. So if you take things that you have a passion for and you feel, then hopefully other people will feel that too. And back to my infrared for a while. I was on a walk in the winter, so perfect time for me, and I could see this copse of trees way, way, way away. My legs were aching by the time I got there. And I could really see what I wanted to do. And again, you've got what could be snow, so it makes it believable. And you get this lovely contrast, the naked trees, the skeletons of them, and the contrast with infrared. I nearly took that out, but no, it's part of the picture, one that's broken off. I nearly took the fence out, but no, it's there to protect, so I decided to leave it in. I had to pass through here to get to that copse of trees. And this is a beach avenue, and you can see it disappearing into like a tunnel. It just went on and on and on. It's about a mile long. And this is one I took fairly recently, still trying to use infrared in the summer. So making the emphasis on the bark of the tree and the shapes rather than the white of the leaves, but they're there. But you can't give up taking pictures in infrared just because it's summer. And again, silver birch. I went to visit a cousin who lives near Virginia Water in Surrey, and he was taking us for a walk. And of course, I saw this, and they lost me. I was in there like a shot, and I quite enjoyed the texture of the grass on this, and then all the different well-spaced silver birch trees. And down the road from where I am, absolute storms we'd had, and the river was in spate where it was narrow, and just this fern growing out in the V of the tree and the speed of the water coming down, and yet this sort of still patch up here was quite extraordinary. And again, nothing sharp because everything's moving. This is being carried by the river, which is normally above the river, but they're dipping in because of the height of the water. And I have a daughter who's moved out of London, thank goodness, and is now living in Wiltshire. And she's not far from Savernake Forest. So in January, I went for a walk through Savernake Forest, and this is one of the pictures I took there. And quite liked the way the light catches things here and there, and how you've got this patch of light to aim for at the end. Again, there was something quite sculptural here. I quite liked these two trees here that were almost talking to each other because they're bending towards each other at the end, and it leads you right to them. And then you've got this patch of light that obstructs you from crossing, really. And then this huge great tree on the left, and obviously the evergreen showing white. And again, a tree that was falling in the storms. There were lots of fallen trees. And again, a narrow path going through and just a couple of trees there to stop you going out of the picture. And one more. Again, I found some silver birch, and still in Savernake Forest. And then I took a side, I could see some trampled grass. I went along to see what it was, and I found a swamp. And these are all dried grasses floating here, and obviously these here, and the evergreen trees at the top. And a different view with the trees reflected. And I walked all the way around it and got the different views from the swamp. And then I found a swamp near where I live. And I mean, this is a messy picture and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was a fascinating place to be. And I hope you can feel the sort of quietness of it. It's absolutely still, a complete reflection. You could turn it up either way and it wouldn't matter. And all these hanging grasses, it was really like something out of Tolkien. And another one, the diamond shape there, perfectly reflected, could go either way and just completely wild. And the last one, I thought this looked a bit like a dancing figure on the left here. And it was just fun to see. I have to stop using my mouse, I need to plug it in. And then infrared here, this is a walk on the coastal path. This was May, that's oilseed rape you can see. On the left, you can see a puffy cloud, which is what they're normally like. But in the middle, that is a snowstorm coming. It was absolutely extraordinary in the middle of May. And it was hail and snow, and it settled for about an hour, but it was really, really stormy. So we'll leave the storms and the infrared and come up to Northumberland, and I'm sure you've seen many pictures of this area. The rocks at, what's the name of the beach? Somebody help me, I've forgotten. Anyway, I'm sure you'll know where it is. It's been done so many times, I thought I've got to do something different with it. I never like doing things that other people have done unless I do them differently. And I remembered this picture I'd taken of some rolling hills in Kent. And I'd inverted the colours to get the opposite spectrum of the colour wheel. And these were sandy hills, and they were the same sort of colours as the rocks were. So I thought I'd try inverting the rocks to see what happened. And all of a sudden I get totally abstract pictures with the lovely graining in the rocks standing out white and everything looking totally different. And again, the different shapes and just different tonal areas altogether. And completely abstract, you wouldn't know where you were, but they are those not rocks in Northumberland. This one isn't, this is in Australia. And this is down at a place called Ulladulla. And it's a very famous area because it's got lots and lots of fossils. It's quite an ancient beach. And this was just the walk to get down there, where it was quite slimy and so on. And somebody had written some graffiti, and inverting the colours, it became much more attractive. And on the beach were these beautiful fossils, which you couldn't see very well because the contrast against them wasn't very good and they were a bit muddy looking. But the moment you inverted the colours, you suddenly could see this what looked like a lace wing, and the inversion of shells, they're in instead of proud. And while I was processing these, I thought I need to take this a bit further, because when I took that photograph, it was about 42 degrees, and I can remember the heat. So I just went on Photoshop to hue and saturation, put it onto red, and took the red slider up to see if there was any heat in it. And there we are. So now I'm on a little project. I'm on a roll now. Global warming. So the next few pictures have all been done with the same thing in mind, gradually getting hotter and hotter. really as a bit of a thought to bring people to think a bit more about what's happening to this world. Australia has been really badly hit. The forest fires and the drought has been horrendous. But look at all the fossils in there, just incredible, a web of fossils. And this one, I went a bit crazy on the colours, I think. They came out with this lovely orange, and I quite liked it because I managed to get a pair, because I got another one. Oh, I haven't put the other one in, bother. There's one where the big stone is orange and some of the rest is blue. So in a small panel, they go together quite well. But I had so many of these, I've got about 50, I couldn't bore you with many. And then the same thing applies on the sand. This is North Cornwall, the sand on the sea. And again, a warm day, let's see, and there we've got the patterns. And on this one, I thought it looked like a fish at the bottom. Can you see the fish's tail? Really looking to see what the patterns are like in the sand. And again, bringing out the heat and the temperature, the warming sands to walk on. And this one was just a nice design. I just quite liked these pebbles on the edge of the water and these stones and the art blues that came into it. And a rock, really, you can see all the texture of that one. Really looks as if it's heating up. It looks as if you could cook on it, doesn't it? And really very abstract, but I just liked the vibrancy of the reds in that rock. Just a total abstract picture, but very vibrant colours. And the sands at Hale, going round, the lovely patterns you get when the tide's out at Hale Beach in North Cornwall. And then where the sea meets the sand, and the sea is warm, the sea's heating up. And I took that one, it's actually almost a macro shot, looking down at my feet. But to me, it looked like an aerial shot of forest fires. It reminded me of Australia with the forest fires and the long roads you get there with just one roundabout. So the mind was going a bit crazy, seeing all sorts of things. I'm getting a bit over the top now, but grasses by the sand dunes, really hot. And the last one of this series, I thought was just, that's it. That's about as hot as you can get. So I think we need to cool down a bit now. We'll move on. Recently, my husband and I went to St David's in North Wales, in North Pembrokeshire, and we stayed in a hotel there, and we went for a walk on the coastal path. And I was getting very frustrated because these colours, all I could see were these lovely pinks and greens and purples. I just couldn't get down there. It was treacherous. And then I could see from a distance this beach and those pink rocks at the end of it. And I thought, if I can get round that rock, if the tide's going out, maybe I can get down there. So I managed to get down onto that beach. And I actually brought one of the stones back with me, which I know I shouldn't. It was only small. And because I thought if I showed somebody this in print form at a camera club or something, they wouldn't believe me that the colours were real. But these lovely pinks, and then when they get wet, they go red. And these lovely grey pebbles wedged between them. And that one, that's a great big boulder. That's the sand you can see at the bottom, this greenish sand. Huge, great pink boulder. And yet the line going along it absolutely followed on to the next rock as if it had been painted. And I just took this because it's kelp seaweed and it was all backlit. I couldn't resist it really. It was lovely. Again, clear blue skies and sunshine. You can see that by the reflection and all the backlighting of the kelp. I'm just moving in closer, how you got the texture as well. So it's just looking at texture and no particular composition, just purely about light and texture. And that one is not a good shot, but I had to take it. There is a place there where they've been mining and it's open to the sea. Now, if anyone takes outdoor photographer, there is a picture of this place, much better than this, in outdoor photography this month, taken where you can see the outlet to the sea. And it was a slate mine. So it's always like this. You can see the line where the tide is and where the slate mine finishes. And I took it purely for the colour and the texture of the rocks behind. And this one was a little harbour we came across, and it was the graphics, as you can see, that got me. You've got the stripes down, the lines across and more, and then just the water breaking up into there with a fairly slow shutter speed. And a bit of peace at the end of the day with the sea and the sand coming through. I think after all the heat and everything else, we just deserve something nice and calming. And I put this one in. We're coming to the end. I've got a few more to go, but it was a piece of graffiti I saw on Dartmoor. And it goes back to one of those quotes we had before. If you be yourself, take what you like, take what you enjoy, take what you can. And if you be yourself and you get something you like and somebody else likes it, that's the bonus. But it's something you want in your album at home that's important. And this one I've just done this afternoon. I wanted to do something to say that you don't always have to be outside. You don't have to be leaping around beaches. We can all try something at home. This is just a black sheet of paper, curved, with some vegetables on it. And I just photographed them with the light coming through my window, no lighting to help me. I hadn't intended to do it as a panel, otherwise the turnip would be a little bit bigger in the frame. But it's just something that anybody can do without any special equipment, with something you're bound to have in your fridge, some vegetables. And an old picture of mine, but one I still love. This is at Dawlish. You'll all have heard of Dawlish because that's the railway line going across these people. And they'd just got off a train and had come down to look at this storm. And I had just finished taking pictures, so I put my tripod away. So it was a grab shot, nothing is sharp. And can you see the flash? Got my mouse back now. And you see the flash here? He's taking a photograph. So I managed to get it just as he took the photograph using his little camera with flash. And the little girl holding up her trousers to keep them dry made it look like sort of old-fashioned culottes. And he with his trilby, it all looked as if it was an old picture, but it wasn't. It was just a couple of years ago. But I rarely have people in my pictures, so it's one I'm particularly fond of. And then I put this in, very brave of me, because I'm trying to begin to put words to my pictures. I'm hoping to do a book. So in winter, earth lies fallow, secrets hidden beneath, protected from frosts, primitive plant spores nurtured. In spring, rains come, temperatures rise, seemingly from nowhere, signs of life appear. Fern shoots erupt majestically as summer approaches. Snail-like fronds unfurl, revealing their once concealed, divided leaflets, creating echoes either side of a simple single stem. They are compact in a tight, large family gathering. Ferns celebrate their flowerless beauty in glorious profusion. Red campion invade, attempting rivalry with colour, and the blue aquilegia demand attention to be a star attraction. Summer is here. So I was just having a play to see how I got on. So if you could bear it, I've done one more. I went out the other night. It had been raining all day, and in the evening the light came out, and I just went out and I was going for a walk, but I thought, oh, I'll bring my camera. And when I started looking, I really started seeing everywhere I looked, there were snails. Some of them are tiny, so tiny you can probably hardly see them, one here. And that's the underside there because the shell's on the back, and a little tiny one here, one much bolder. So the curse of some gardeners, but food for hedgehogs and birds, crack, 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 thrushes destroy shells to get a juicy reward of the stuffing within. It has rained out in copious numbers, slithering, slipping, sliding slowly over rain-drenched leaves, small, large, white-lipped, brown-lipped, leaving silvery, glistening trails, snails' exclusive artistry and beauty exhibited. And after that, I think it's probably time I shut up. So thank you all very much for watching. And if there's any questions, I'm very happy to take them. And that is leaving Bude swimming pool one night with the moon setting. So it's always a good place for me to finish. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I feel enchanted, really. I mean, I knew your work, but as you were talking about how you see the details in, you know, those little pebbles, that made me think, yes, that's true. Because I sometimes do see those things, but I'm not taking pictures of it. Maybe I should. Yes, I really thank you so much for sharing with us, you know, your journey, really.
Not at all. Well, I hope the journeys continues, and I hope all of yours do too.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just looking if anyone's putting any questions, but no, we have very quiet members today. But anyway, I'm sure that if anyone would have any questions or anything like that, they can contact you through your website.
Of course they can, yes. I'd be very happy to help anyone.
We shared your website on our social media. So yes, thank you so much, Susan. And yeah, good night.
Good night. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye. Right, I'll just leave now. I've stopped screen sharing, so.
I really enjoyed the talk. I often make my son smile when I see something, and there's always something that can inspire thoughtful thought, and it's got emotion. I also love silver birch. It's from
good.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Paula. Thank you.
All right, well, lovely to speak to you, and I hope people got something out of it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Good night. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.